might be worthwhile electing a temporary chair while the mayor is...
I move that Councillor Sears chair.
Any other nominations?
No.
Councillor Sears.
Vote?
Yes.
No. Well, there's one nomination.
One. Okay. Hang on for the gallery. Of honour.
I know.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have arrived at the appointed hour, so we will start. Thank you very much for coming. The membership is as listed. However, I do understand that we do have a couple of apologies. I know that the Mayor will be arriving a little bit late this evening, but he is due, so I'm standing just temporarily in his stead. The only other apology I've been advised is Councillor Villard. Otherwise, the Assembly of Councillors is here before you. So, having dealt with the membership and apologies, are there any disclosures of conflicts of interest, councillors? There being none?
No, Chair.
Then, if I can have a... Oh, Councillor Griffin?
Can you speak up, Councillor?
I'm just up to item number 3. Councillor Griffin, any disclosures of conflicts of interest?
Yes, look, I'll have one indirect I have a conflict of interest in relation to an indirect conflict, and it's in relation to the Solar Savers program.
Yep.
One of my siblings is listed as one of the people who has taken up the offer of the Solar Savers program. So it will be an indirect interest, and I'll seek guidance on. I may need to actually lead I would prefer to lead the chamber when that matter is decided on, or it could be that like we do with the budget situation, where we have a conflict where that individual person could be considered separately, and then I could step in to consider the whole project in its entirety. I'll take some advice from our governance officer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's up to yourself, Mr. Chairperson, if you wish to separate the resolution or the recommendation report on whether or not Councillor Rico has a conflict or wishes to vacate the chambers is up to you.
But to expedite things, because it's not a major issue, look, I may just leave the chamber when that issue's been decided upon, and
depending on the balancing act, because our quorum is a bit...
yeah, that's...
I might use my discretion to say that you can stay.
we'll see, as we come closer to it, we'll see what the...
Thank you,
Thank
Councillor.
you,
All right.
Acting Mayor.
Now, we are up to public question time. So, sorry, one step confirmation.
Mr. Acting Mayor, could I just please ask you to speak louder?
Yeah.
Because I can hardly hear you, and I'm not sure whether people in the gallery can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me better now? Okay. These microphones are funny. Okay, so we're on item 4. So if we can have a move for confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting, Councillor Williams and Councillor McCarthy as the secretary. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried. Next, we have public question time. We have half an hour scheduled for questions. I've just been pointed to a couple that have been placed on notice. Which one's first? I've just been advised in terms of the process, ladies and gentlemen, for those who have actually submitted the questions, whether the questioners themselves wish to pose the question, otherwise I can read them out. So, if I can call first Mr. Matthew Skinner. Okay, so I'll read Matthew's question. With regard to the Oakover Village project, following the recent changes in signage on surrounding streets, there has been a huge increase in traffic on Erin Street, measured in orders of magnitude, accompanied with many more speeding vehicles. I'm concerned that these changes have simply shifted a problem rather than addressing the core issues. I would like to ask, how does this alteration of infrastructure supposed to address the objectives of the project? Specifically, A, improved safety by reducing traffic speeds in local streets, B, discourage through traffic, and C, maximise safety. The answer that's been provided from Mr Skinner is as follows. Council acknowledges your concerns in relation to the changes in traffic flow since the installation of the new traffic management signage. The rebalancing of traffic flow can often take time to occur as motorists become familiar with the new restrictions and traffic treatments, and Council will be monitoring the area following the introduction of all Stage 1 measures. This monitoring will take place approximately 6 months after the last treatment is completed to allow time for motorists to adjust to the changed conditions. Once the results have been analysed, we will then be able to assess what impact the measures have had and their effectiveness. This may also lead to supplementary measures being implemented where necessary. So that's the first question. The second one, is Mr Chris Nicolaou here? If not, I'll read Mr Nicolaou's question. Why are fees payable only accepted by credit card and not transferred by BPay or EFT? I do not carry cash for safety and I do not have a credit card as the interest is too high. Currently, everyone uses electronic cash to make transactions easier. I find it very archaic that the Council uses credit card only and is not up to date with the times. It is very frustrating that this Council is behind the times badly. Note from customer service, the payment that Chris was referring to was in relation to an asset protection bond. So these ones are paid in relation to any, I suppose, works that are done on people's properties, and so the asset protection bond is put in place in the eventuality that, say, for instance, any infrastructure is broken, that money can be withheld to reinstate, or if in the circumstances in which there's no damage, the money will be reimbursed. So the response that was provided to Chris, payment options for asset protection bonds and permit fees are as follows. Online, Visa, MasterCard, debit or credit card. Pay by phone, Visa, MasterCard, debit or credit card. Pay in person at Council, cash, cheque, EFTPOS, Visa, MasterCard, debit or credit card. Council is in the process of reviewing its payment options with the idea of providing standard payment options for all fees, fines and permits. Currently, BPay is an available option for most council services, rates, animal registration and local law permits. However, BPay cannot be made available for all payments as some permits and fines, example parking infringements, have statutory limitations impacting the issues and payment. So that's Mr Nicolaou's question. Next question is from Mr Peter Thompson. If Mr Thompson is here. Peter, would you like to ask your question yourself? All right, I'll read out your question. Re-CUB dispute, boycott of products encouraged by the trade union movement now. At the last council meeting, I requested that you, as in the council, boycott all CUB consumption of their products at council functions for the life of the dispute. I therefore re-ask you to boycott CUB products as per August 15 meeting last. At this meeting, because the Mayor's not here, it was directed at the Mayor, the Council quoted rules, ordinances against the boycott. I therefore ask for a formal written explanation of this. And the response that's been provided for you, Peter, the question will be taken on notice and officers will provide a written response to you. Thanks. The fourth question is from Ms. Nicole Longmire, if she's here.
Yes.
Yep. Would you like to ask your own question?
Thank you for hearing us. I'm a resident in Edmund Street in Fairfield, and I sent a photograph in showing substantial pooling of water in our street. There's a lot of potholes. It's closed at one side and open at the other, and it's fairly more than dry. Thank you. We have a number of residents who live on subdivided blocks facing the street, and there have been no improvements to the road at all in the time that I lived there or owned my property, as well as most of my neighbours. We've had incidents where children have fallen off their scooters travelling to and from school, and the general public as well, as we've been questioning people on why has our street not been improved. My question is, what are the council's plans for improving the street? First question. And the second question is, why does the council continue to maintain the classification as an unmade road despite the change in users being subdivided properties, many more pedestrians and cyclists, and in particular children?
Yep.
Thank you.
The response that have been provided, and thanks for submitting your question on notice, is as follows. Edwin Street has never been formally constructed by council, hence classification as unmade. It is understood that when Edwin Street was under the City of Northcote, surplus asphalt was dumped on the surface from time to time, creating the current appearance. Under Section 163 of the Local Government Act, residents can be required to contribute to the construction of unmade roads through a special charge scheme. However, such a scheme can only be applied with the agreement of the majority of affected residents. The introduction of a special charge scheme for Edward Street has been formally rejected by residents on several occasions. Following issues with regard to allowing developments to face unmade roads, such as Edwin Street, Council now requires developers to construct access roads. So, I suppose, in short, I take the last part of that scripted answer to suggest that it may happen de facto, courtesy of the developers who may get developed, because they need to provide a contribution for the development. So, in order to access the new developments that they're creating, they would require to provide access to those via constructed roads. So, it seems that the cheaper option is to allow for incremental change. That's what I'd say.
Mr. Acting Chair, before you continue to the next question, I just would note I had a conversation with Mr. Doig, who's also in the gallery, about this issue, and would ask through yourself to our officers if councillors can receive a copy of both the question but also the photographs that were provided, because they go to council, but councillors won't have seen them this evening, so that councillors can sum up what action we may wish to take in the future.
All right.
Just on indulgence, at the point in which petitions are being tabled for the information of Councillor McCarthy and other councillors, I have one which I will be tabling, and I would welcome you stepping in.
I think we have a section, Councillor Walsh, for petitions, but thanks for foreshadowing them anyway. But we'll get there. Yes, it's item 11. So
yeah, I was just giving that.
All right.
Yeah.
So the next question that I have. And this one has been posed by Reservoir Community Advocacy Group. And the question is in two parts. Is it not the responsibility of Darebin Council's Legal Safety Committee to closely coordinate the community needs and the provision of police services through the Darebin Police Services Area Manager that, if monitored, should have triggered responses from the Darebin Emergency Management Committee? Second part, Darebin can call on the Operational Response Unit to assist with locally identified issues. Just how does Darebin go about providing that operational response service to the community? And I do apologise in advance, ladies and gentlemen, because it's quite a lengthy response, so bear with me. The role of the Darebin Local Safety Response or Reference Group is to coordinate a whole of community partnership response to priority community safety issues. Members of Darebin Community Safety Reference Group also provide community safety and crime prevention advice to Council, raise awareness and advocacy about crime and safety issues in the Darebin community. All these and other meetings, Council regularly raises issues of concern for Victoria Police response, and Council seeks to complement their enforcement approach through social and environmental crime prevention and community education. While local issues identified at these areas, these and other meetings can be allocated existing resources by the Darebin Police Services Area Manager, there are issues such as the volume of crimes responsible for the recent increase in crime in Darebin that are an issue across the entire region and require resources beyond what can be allocated by the Darebin Police Service Area Manager. In some instances where there is a significant need, additional resources can be provided for specialised responses, which Darebin has benefited from in recent years. This includes being one of the first areas to establish a Victoria Police Family Violence Response Unit and the development of specific resources to the Northland Precinct as part of the Northland Precinct Action Group. So that first part was in response to the first question, and the second, the Darebin Police Service Area, like others in the region, can still engage the Operations Response Unit in the capacity to provide rapid and ready response to major incidents and disasters at short notice. However, for the ongoing volume crime issues, this is managed through other, more targeted regional operations such as the recent and ongoing Operation Influx, which targets vehicle crime and residential burglaries in Darebin and Whittlesea. Council recognises that responding to and preventing crime is not solely the responsibility of the Victoria Police, and that an increase in police numbers and enforcement alone will not prevent crime or reduce the overall crime rate. Preventing crime, particularly volume crimes such as theft of and from motor vehicles, requires a holistic and long-term commitment to address the social and environmental factors which perpetuate these crimes. Council will continue to support and work closely with Victoria Police through a variety of approaches, such as facilitating our multi-agency place-based programs in key hotspots, such as the Northland Precinct Action Group. 2, delivering primary prevention initiatives that address the underlying causes of crime and engage young people at risk of or involved in crime and antisocial behaviour. 3, working with police to ensure that we design and maintain safe public spaces, undertake works based on crime prevention principles, and where required, seek resources to install CCTV to assist with apprehension. And lastly, complement enforcement initiatives through programs that raise community awareness and education. So that's the quite comprehensive answers to the it must be a new group because I've never heard of them, councillors. Reservoir Community Advocacy Group, Inc. The next question, question number 6, is from Mr. John Nugent of Epping. John, would you like to ask your question yourself? Okay. I have received correspondence twice from the council that the public toilets will not be opened at Donouth Reserve, but each time council did not give any reasons why. Could you please arrange a written response to the questions so I can show that the ratepayers who asked me this question, or the plural, ratepayers. Response. Council has replied with written responses in the past and will provide a further written response to you. Thanks, John. The next question is also from yourself, John. Shall I read it? Could you please advise why the Keon Park Tennis Club was visited by council officers to discuss the netball courts and their positioning, and while the Keon Park Stars JFC was not given the same courtesy by council officers, so the KPS JFC, if I got that right, a committee could have input re netball courts. And the response that's been provided, the question will be taken on notice and officers will provide you with a written response. Now, that's the end of the submitted ones, although I did notice another one. And that's from Mr. Bruce Nager. Hopefully I've got that pronounced right. Bruce, would you like to ask your own question?
Thank you, Mr. Some weeks ago I read in the local paper that the council has intended changing the name of Batman Park.
Yep.
And that. And I was horrified to read such a statement, of course, And I'm just wondering what councillors are in favour of changing the name of Batman Park.
Yeah. Well, I
If
think...
they put up their hands, please.
Well, that's okay, Bruce. I'll answer the question. I've just been advised, though, that at this point in time, we'll take it on notice, but we will provide you with a written response in terms of the process the council is following in regard to this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we do have a few more minutes. Are there any questions from the gallery at this point in time? One question. Yep.
Yes, just in relation to Edward Street.
Yes.
My question is, why should the residents pay for a council public liability issue?
Sorry, I should have asked your name.
Oh, sorry, my name is Vic Doig. I'm actually a resident of Edmund Street. And again, my question is, why should the residents have to pay for a council public liability issue?
Now, on the history of this, and I think some of the councillors from my end of town would know this, we've had a bit of a historical legacy with a few streets that were unmade for a number of years. Now, they, for some reason, had still been retained, I think, from historical legacy as part of the original subdivision that had occurred, and essentially the designation of those were still deemed to be private property. In fact, in Preston, or at least Kingsbury from what I recall, I mean in the last 30 odd years, Dunn Street was pretty much the same way. It was a gravelised road, and of course the construction that we're seeing now that's there took place with a combination of partnerships between residents and the old Preston City Council at the time. So with these streets that are there which are off, not Albert Street, Station Street I should say, there's about, I think from memory, about 3 or 4 of them. They still remain in their unmade state, if I can call them that. It did come up as an issue a few years back, but the way that the state government treats it as far as the Act is concerned, it needs a contributory scheme to reinstate if it's I suppose an unmade situation. The same applies with right-of-ways as well. So contributory schemes are one way in which that can be done, and of course there are obvious opportunities there to stagger the payments over time, rather than sort of seeking a lump sum contribution from each resident in terms of what you might call an equitable distribution of the cost to put in the road. So if you've got a small street, you might have, say, 10 residents to negotiate. From the advice that I've been given anyway, which was in relation to the earlier question, it does require some expression of majority support amongst residents to go ahead, which is a bit unfortunate because sometimes the minority wishes for it to go ahead because they can't stand living what looks like in a backward situation when everyone else has got a beautiful street. But unfortunately some rest on their principle and say, no, just like you mentioned before, Victor, it should be the council or whichever authority to do it. It's not ours, we pay our rates. Unfortunately, the limit of that is in relation to the guidance that's provided by the Act itself. So if there's anything I can answer, sadly, in that regard. Okay, I've been pointed to time. Now, yeah. So, thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen. We'll proceed, councillors, with the rest of the agenda. So, the first item we have, of course, is item 6, which is consideration of reports. 6.1. Councillor McCarthy moves.
Mr. Acting Mayor, look, I'd like to express a conflict of interest.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
And what my conflict of interest is that it's an indirect interest by close association, and the close association is that it's in regards to 6.1, which is the Solar Saver Special Charge Scheme declaration, is that I have a sibling who will be participating in this scheme, and as a result of that, I think it's only fair that I vacate the chamber.
All right, thank you. Councillor Greer, we'll just wait a moment, councillors.
Yeah.
All right, Councillor McCarthy, you're the mover. Can I please have a seconder, councillors?
Second.
Councillor Lawrence is the seconder. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is a special charge scheme declaration, which in itself doesn't sound very exciting. But the thing that is exciting is what it's going to deliver. And I want to touch on that first of all, and then explain the instrument through which we are hopefully adopting this evening. The Solar Savers Scheme is in its second iteration. It is an Australian first. It is, in fact, Australia's first rates-based solar program, and we've had the pleasure as councillors of working on a special committee to develop this. And Councillor Cetas, I'd like to acknowledge our work together on this particular program. But I'd also like to acknowledge the pioneers that were part of the first incarnation of this, the 300 households that signed up and in fact made this the first time that a council and the community had worked together using rates as a means through which to finance solar PV installations on roofs, removing the upfront cost barrier, a significant and game-changing approach when it comes to making solar affordable and accessible for a broad range of people. The target for that program, which was rolled out a couple of years ago, were of course pensioner households, and we decided to go with pensioner households because we could see the intrinsic value of providing that relief when it came to energy costs for those residents. In the second iteration, the subscription has not been as high. It hasn't been the 300 households, and there's a very good reason why that is, which I'll touch upon if I get to speak to the next item, which is about NAGA's advocacy. But I just wanted to explain what we're doing here tonight, which is back in July we proposed a special rate scheme based on the interest we had from the community. That rate scheme looked at a number of households, around 100, or just under 100, and a number of neighbourhood houses as well, with a view to doing just what we had done with Solar Savers Mark 1, doing that with Solar Savers Mark 2. The subscription, as I said, is a bit lower than the first iteration. This time it's 83 residential properties, but they are residential properties who deserve, need and are right to jump on board in relation to this program. They are a mixture of low-income and pensioner households and people who, in many cases, would not be able to find the money up front to get solar on their roofs in this way. So what we're adopting here this evening is the legal mechanism. Council had to go out under the Local Government Act and advise that it would be seeking to declare a special rate. There were no objections, which is terrific. And as councillors can see from the attachment, the list of properties who have received this solar program and have signed up to this are listed there. It's a fully publicly accountable process, and I'm really pleased that we've gotten to this stage at our last meeting before we enter caretaker, so we can get the ball rolling, get those panels on those roofs, and make, I think, a very tangible difference to both the energy costs that those residents experience, but also a tangible impact on the renewable energy that we generate in the city. Last time we produced an extra 5% of renewable energy in Darebin, and we'll get at least 1.5% out of this program.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Lawrence is the seconder.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Just, I would note this participation on this program, while it's dropped, and obviously there's issues about feed-in tariff rates and things at play there, remains very high across the city. And in fact, 25% of the people participating here are in Latrobe Ward. Again, I think the participation rate previously was even higher when there was favourable, more favourable quota of tariff rates, because fundamentally, when you are on age pension or disability pension, you are forced to conserve. So when we did have a very good deal on the table, we had a great amount of people coming to it. I think it's still a landmark program, and obviously driven by Councillor Cetas and Councillor Trent McCarthy and others. But it is a landmark program because it does show how, over the long term, a council can actually activate change to clean energy. So we can only hope that we get a better feed-in tariff rate, because these kind of schemes will complement anything that the state and federal do.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Well, I propose to put that to the vote, councillors. All those in favour? And I'll note that as carried unanimously.
Yep.
Yes. Yes. We'll just wait a moment for Councillor Gregor to come back. Okay. Well, He's just indisposed at the moment, but he's free to come back. So, Councillor McCarthy, I'll take you as the mover. Seconder. Councillor Walsh. Councillor McCarthy, please.
Thank you, and I see Councillor Greco's returned, which is great. So, look, I'm really pleased to speak to the motion for the next report, which doesn't require a substantive decision of council this evening, but it is an update on the work of NAGA, which, as councillors would recall, is the Northern Alliance for Greenhouse Action. And I would say to councillors, I thank councillors for the decision that was made at the start of this term to recommit council to membership of NAGA, and this report provides the evidence as to why it is so important that we work at a regional level when it comes to our greenhouse action, but also the work that NAGA impacts, in fact, not just at a state and national level, but in fact at a global level as well. And for those people in the gallery this evening, Mr Mayor, who are considering joining council in the next term, I'd strongly encourage them to read this report, because this is actually the work that council does best, which is working collaboratively with other councils and with our communities. NAGA, of course, has been around for well over a decade. I think it's around 13 years. Paul Murfitt, who was one of the CEOs of NAGA for a long time, for about a decade, recently retired and has been well replaced by a terrific new CEO who has brought new energy and some different thinking, and it's great to see. NAGA recently had its first annual conference, and it was a roaring success. There were several hundred people there, and a real sense of momentum and hope based on some changed policy settings, obviously at the state level. I want to touch on something that's covered in the report, though, and that's the thing that can often be missed when councils are members of regional collaborations, and this collaboration includes a whole range of northern metropolitan councils, is that NAGA has been in receipt of close to $800,000 from a mixture of federal and state grants as a result of the work that is done around the table. And I've had the pleasure of being Council's NAGA executive rep since 2010, and I've seen the change with federal and state policy, and we've always been at the forefront as an organisation in terms of saying we know what change needs to occur in our communities, and we know how to work across council borders, and that's what NAGA's about. So you'll see there the figure, almost $800,000, and the major piece that money is going to is in fact to look at the rollout of the Solar Savers program across the northern metropolitan region and out into the eastern suburbs in partnership with another greenhouse alliance called EGA. So the work that started in this chamber a few years ago is now spreading across the north and out into the east. And significantly, as we bring more councils on board with programs like Solar Savers and more residents and more businesses and so on and so forth, we make a stronger case to the state government for a fair feed-in tariff that is not the piddly 6 cents per kilowatt hour that has created a disincentive for our current Solar Savers scheme, but in fact getting to parity. What you pay for your electricity, you should receive at least in return. And that is a very simple principle of equity, and I'm very pleased to present the report.
Thanks, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Walsh is seconder.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much, Councillor McCarthy. Look, Councillor McCarthy mentioned the other councils which are which are involved, and Banyule, Hume, Manningham, Melbourne, Moreland, Whittlesea, and Yarra, and Nillumbik, and I think why I'm mentioning that is because one of the first things that we did as a new council, and I'm sure Councillor McCarthy will recall this vividly, was that we was one of the first things we did was to rejoin NAGA, because we had the membership had lapsed, and I think particularly given those councils, that was the right decision, because all of the councils around us were members of NAGA. If they and that is an argument in itself for membership, but yes, NAGA does do a lot of work in advocacy of the environmental space, and this one thing I will say is, because I didn't speak on the last one, is the Solar Savers program, which has come from our membership.
I'm sorry to say, Councillor Cath, your time has expired.
I was going to say it's fairly famous. Whilst I was in Perth on a family trip, I was congratulated by a family friend who works in the solar industry.
Oh, very good.
In WA. So
nice. All right. I'll put that to the vote. Councillors, all those in favour? And on that's been carried unanimously as well. Thank you very much. Now, 6.3, amendment to the 16-17 fees and charges schedule. Councillor Lee, to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. I also have a slight addition, which I did circulate to councillors earlier, which is note number 5, which is to noting the additional income as a result of the amended 2016-17 fees and charges, and refer any additional income to the mid-year budget review, including officer's recommendation for any special capital works projects.
Seconder.
I'll second.
Councillor Morrison.
Mr. Mayor, before Councillor Lee speaks, I just have a few questions and clarifications, if I may.
Sure.
I actually put these questions through earlier this afternoon, but I don't think I've received a response. I just wanted to understand that if we do change the, we fix up the errors or the omissions, where will they take effect from, and will they be retrospective or not, and what's the consequence of the resolution that is being considered here tonight?
Mr. Deb.
Yeah, as soon as the resolution is made, the new resolution will stand effective.
So could you speak up, please?
Yeah, any changes will be effective as soon as the council make the decision. And practically we can implement it.
So no retrospectivity.
Okay.
It'll be prospective. Yeah. So, Councillor Lee mover, Councillor Lawrence seconder. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report outlines some, just addresses some operational errors that we have discovered as a result of the adoption of the 2016-17 budget. For the benefit of the gallery, as part of the budget, includes a fees and charges section. And what that does is that it outlines council's fees and charges in relation to a whole range of services and goods that it provides to the community or on behalf of another government agency. What this amendment does is that it looks at two specific areas, the Public Health and Wellbeing Act and the fees and charges associated with that, but also the any fees and charges associated with the road closures and so forth. These changes, some of them were due to various errors and omissions, some were due to changes in statutory provisions of the Act in which we are undertaking on behalf of another state government agency, such as those under the Food Act, for example, as outlined on page 20 of the report. I do want to draw councillors' attention to page 20 of the report, in which there is an anticipated income of $35,600 for for the Public Health and Wellbeing Act changes to the schedule, but also another $300,000 in relation to the additional revenue for the review of the plans in relation to road closures and so forth. Rather than to have this amount of money go back to general revenue, my specific amendment is to let's look at the capital works that's on our list of our council, and perhaps look at which those projects could do with that additional revenue, because one of the performance indicators that we are measured against and benchmarked against other councils as a council ourselves is the way in which our capital works projects are delivered, but also our asset renewal gap, so that our aging infrastructure are continually upgraded, such as playgrounds and pavilions and so forth. So $325,000 is not an insignificant sum of money, but rather than being specific about that, definitive about that $325,000, I'll rather get the officer's report, because there will always be some variance between budget and actual income generated as a result of this amendment. And once we have the actual figures, we can then look at any capital projects when we wish to expend that revenue on.
right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Lawrence, seconder.
Nothing to add, just that I'd welcome the amendment to strengthen our capital works effort.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, I propose to put that to the vote, councillors. All those in favour? And that's been carried. Thank you very much. Next item is 6.4, Food Security and Nutrition Action Plan. Councillor McCarthy to speak and Councillor Lee seconder. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Mr. Acting Chair, I should say. I won't do that to you. This action plan is the next iteration in work that has in fact been a focus of this council going back not only through this term but in fact into the previous term. And I had the pleasure in the previous term of council of calling for a food security plan, and it's now become a nutrition plan as well. And I think that's important because it recognises the interconnection between both food insecurity and poverty and the health effects that flow on from not having access to fresh and healthy food on a regular basis. And it may seem madness that actually occurs in a place like Darebin. We have all sorts of forms of food available to people, not only through our food outlets, but also, of course, through things like Preston Market, the other supermarkets and other food providers. But there are people in the city of Darebin who live in extreme poverty. And I say that with the utmost seriousness. There are people in our city who are not only homeless, but in fact actually have to make difficult decisions between paying the power bill and buying fresh fruit and veg that week. And that's a terrible situation for people to be in. There is work that council does in this space, and it's outlined in the report, and of course the action plan sets the principles through which council does that work. There's obviously a much bigger picture to this, which Darebin, I think, is very proud to be part of, which is wherever possible finding ways to access food that is not used, that otherwise is thrown out by supermarkets, by other organisations, and getting that and making that available to people who simply otherwise wouldn't see it. So reducing waste is a key thing, and we have some terrific organisations in our immediate vicinity here that do that work. I would note one of them, in fact, being Diverse, which of course runs a terrific program around food insecurity and the food bank as well. I want to touch on just as part of this though, Mr. Chair, is the collaboration that came out of this, out of a council program and out of a community program, which is called Transition Darebin, and a program that we've supported for a number of years, which is called the Fruit Squad. And the Fruit Squad, I think, is a really great example of where we're taking action on food insecurity and nutrition, but actually involving a whole range of people. And this involves people in parts of Darebin, not just obviously in Northcote, but also further north, where people are wanting to involve themselves in environmental activities, and the activity they've taken is in fact pruning the fruit trees of their neighbours who can no longer do that. There's excess fruit and vegetables. They then donate that to organisations like Diverse and the Food Bank, and that gets dispersed to people that have no access to fresh fruit and vegetables. So there's a lovely cycle here about reducing waste, connecting people, reducing social isolation, and making a tangible impact on people's lives. I'll end it there, Mr. Mayor. I commend the action plan. I think it's great that we're committing to this again.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Lee is the seconder.
Yes, just very briefly, I do want to highlight the three specific achievements out of the 2010 to 2015 food security plan, upon which this second plan will be built upon. In that 5 years between 2010 and 2015, Council has worked with many businesses and volunteer groups in our community, as well as neighbourhood houses and other not-for-profits in delivering food and ensuring food security and nutrition to our most disadvantaged residents. The three particular projects that I'm very proud that this council is delivering on, one is the Second Bite, where they take away some surplus food from supermarkets, and as the report noted, 200 kilos of fresh produce from the Preston Market, and donate that to Food Bank to ensure that people do access to fresh fruit and vegetables on their plates. The second initiative, which again Councillor McCarthy outlined earlier, is the series of community gardens that's been sprouting up along the railway tracks, and I think more can be done and should be done in our new food security plan. And Councillor McCarthy mentioned earlier about some of the social inclusion aspects of food security, and I do note that our neighbourhood houses and some of our not-for-profit organisations provide social meals where they provide upon a gold coin donation, people can enjoy a nutritious meal. But more than that, it's an opportunity for them to get out of the house and socialise, where many of them are socially isolated, and it does provide that social outlet which many of them do not otherwise have. So I fully commend that we are resolved to undertake this plan and wish that we can deliver further success upon the ones we already built. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mr Acting Chair. Look, I'd like to also say a few words in relation to this report, because I think it's a critical report, and I think it's great to see that the council has an action plan in relation to this. Obviously, people would ask, what has council got to do with food security and a nutrition action plan? Well, part of our charter as a local government is to look after the well-being of our residents and our citizens, and this goes to the core of that, because I'd like to highlight what's on page 24 and the people and the types of people that actually face food insecurity. And just to mention a few, one is frail older people or people with mental illness. Also, it's mentioned here that people in housing stress or in homelessness situations, and also very importantly, women experiencing or at risk of experiencing family violence. Yeah. So we're talking about quite a vast number of people in our community who are exposed to food insecurity. And if you look at on page 23 of the report, I think the statistics are quite alarming there, where it says that nearly 6% of households are running out of food as a result of either their income or their particular circumstances. Now that's much higher than the state average. So it's something that we need to think about, because it goes to the very livability of our city, and actually enabling people to participate in a full way in relation to the life of our city. And the final comment that I would make, and I think Councillor Lee touched on this, just most recently, as I do often, strolling around Preston Market, I was talking to one of the butchers, and we know that there's a bit of a controversy associated with Preston Market at the moment. But one of the butchers said to me, it's important that Preston Market continues to thrive and exist, because Preston Market provides prices much lower in relation to fresh foods and fresh produce than a lot of the other supermarkets.
Nice point to finish
so
on.
that's very important that that point was made in light of this food security issue.
Thank you very much, Councillor Greco. Well, I propose to put that to the vote. Councillors, all those in favour? And it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, the next one is 6.5.
Happy to move it, Mr
Yep.
Mayor.
2016-17 Arts Partnership Initiative. Seconded by Councillor Walsh. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll stop calling you Mayor. And it's a shame Councillor Villala couldn't be with us tonight, because she's also been co-chair of the Arts Ambassadors Committee. And I would say that we are really lucky in the City of Darebin, before I get into the report, to have a fantastic arts and culture department, amazing people that bring about incredible events that bring our community together, and they work incredibly hard with a small number of resources. But importantly, they also have the important task of seeking to work out which organisations council should fund through the Arts Partnership Initiative, and that's what we're deciding upon this evening. It's a rigorous assessment process. Not all councils do this. Some councils, in fact, designate a very small amount of money through their community grants program, in the order of a couple of $1,000s to these sorts of arts initiatives. Instead, we have a different process. It's similar to what occurs at the state level, whereby we have organisations and projects that are funded, and they're aligned directly with council's plan, which emphasises social inclusion, participation, and of course connection between people from different parts of the city and beyond. Councillors will note that the total investment of the Arts Partnership Initiative for the next 12 months is in the order of $83,000. There are lots of programs that are going to be funded from that allocation. It's quite significant. I'll draw councillors' attention to pages 30 and 31, which provides a table and an outline of what is proposed to be funded. And I will just draw to the attention of councillors some of the groups that are proposed to be funded through this. Of course, the Ilbagiri Theatre Company, looking at doing an Indigenous performance lab, all the way through to groups like Westside Circus, which is a mass participation youth circus that's now based here in the City of Darebin at Melbourne Polytechnic, and we're really pleased to have them here. And we know that they are drawing children and young people and families from from all over Darebin and beyond. So they're a real draw card for this city, but they're all about participation. In terms of the outcomes, obviously there are projects and shows and activities that are going to have public outcomes in the next 12 months and sometimes beyond that as well. And a lot of the things that are being proposed to be done here in fact are open to the community, either through our own festivals or in fact as showings in our venues as well. So that's really exciting, and it means that there's an outcome for our community, not just for the artists themselves. There are a lot of artists involved. 33 artists are involved through the successful project partnerships, which will involve a total of 507 participants. People involved through attending, being involved, participating and creating, and that's really what this is about. I won't go into the economic value of this. This is not arts for art's sake, it's arts for community's sake, and it makes a big difference, and I commend the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Walsh, seconder.
Thank you very much. Look, I'm going. Councillor McCarthy, talked about the project partnerships which are going to come out of come out this year through the arts ambassadors. So I was thinking that I'm going to talk about the key cultural organisations, which and I'll just also touch on a couple of them. And these organisations which I have been in my time as a councillor so far, I've been able to visit on several occasions. One is Arts Project Australia, which is based down in Westgarth, and it supports artists with all kinds of disabilities, including particularly intellectual disabilities. So that provides I'm sure people would agree, a fantastic outlet for people, and it's and this is the stuff we should be supporting. Also, the Darebin City Brass, and of course led by the great Jack Kelly, but also the Preston Symphony Orchestra, and the youth concerto competition, and people in the Darebin Symphony Orchestra are coming from all around Melbourne to join, and I was lucky enough, along with Councillor Lee, to attend, and was very happy. The standard was very high.
Thank you. Councillor Gregor.
Yeah, just very briefly, Mr Mayor, I think it's worthy to mention, again, to underline the organisations that are actually receiving our funds. So I think it's important that we stop and pause and look at the organisations there on page 30 and 31. I know that other councillors have mentioned them, but they are, the funds go towards advancing the art creation of our multicultural community, together with a lot of grants going towards our younger community and also our ageing community. So it's really cutting cutting across a cross-section of our community. And why these grants are important, why these partnerships are important, is that in the partnership, while council provides some money, but the return that we get is manifold in that sense. And just the final point that I think that needs to be made, Mr Acting Chair, is that at a national level, the Australia Council has been severely cut in terms of its funding. And the cuts to the Australia Council have been particularly around supporting community organisations. And that's where I think that local government has to step in and continue to provide support to local community-based organisations in promoting artistic and art creation in our city. So I commend the work that's been done, and I really look forward to the work that is produced.
Yes, I understand that I've already spoken.
You don't get too much of the cherry.
But could I just say?
No, I'll ask you to kindly sit down.
Just on indulgence, I have an interest.
To allow other councillors to speak.
Okay, I just wanted to note that I wanted to note that given Councillor Greco mentioned the Arts, the Australia Council, I wanted to note just a very indirect, vague interest, not a conflict, but an interest, as my mother was formerly on the bench.
Well, look, you may want to use the booklet. Before we move to the vote, I like the heat maps. So if you've got the report there in front of you, and I'm sure councillors do, if you look at page 15 of the report, it actually demonstrates what we've already known in terms of where the arts hub, pretty much, of Melbourne is now. It used to be Yarra's, and now we've got proof that it's actually Darebin's. So very interesting heat maps. So councillors, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And I know that that's been carried unanimously as well. Thank you. Now,
happy to move 6.6.
I'm moving the next one with an amendment, Mr. Acting Chair.
I'm going to second it.
Can we hear the amendment first? So I think there's two of us that have got
I'm
amendments.
moving 6.7, Senior Home Garden Program.
we were up to 6.6.
6.6. I'll move 6.6.
I've got an amendment to the 6.6, so I don't mind if Councillor Walsh is going to move it, but I'd like to propose the amendment before we hear the...
Yeah, it might be easier to go with Councillor McCarthy on this one, just to hear it, and if you're happy, then you can move it, and Councillor McCarthy can second. So Councillor McCarthy, please.
Thank you. I did sort of flag it earlier, but basically the recommendation...
Didn't get there on time.
would be point 1, and point 2 would be forwards a copy, so that Council forwards a copy of the report to State and Federal Arts Ministers, Creative Victoria and the Australia Council and Arts Industry Media.
I've just been advised, Councillor McCarthy, that we actually didn't get it.
Okay, I've got it here. So
yes, please. So you might want to show Councillor Walsh if he's happy with that.
I'm happy to read it out again if councillors wish to hear it. So the additional point is that Council forwards a copy of the report to State and Federal Arts Ministers, the Australia Council, Creative Victoria and Arts Industry Media. That would be point 2 of the motion.
Okay, well, now, essentially now, are you okay with that?
Yep, I'm okay with that.
Okay, good. So we'll roll that up as part of the substantive motion, and we'll go with you, Councillor Walsh, to move, and Councillor McCarthy to second.
Thanks for that, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the amendment. And I'll too just flag the same interest as the before. But this report talks about the. I think it is, and I think it's high time that such a study was done, given the obvious role that the arts plays in our community, and noting sorry, the phone ring just thrown me a little bit, but and because it's interesting to note that little is known about the arts, arts and creative arts sectors in Darebin, despite various reports at a national and state level, and which means it's certainly high time to do such a report, given the role that arts plays in Darebin. And what I do note is the arts and creative sector in Darebin is Darebin's 8th largest by gross regional product, and is worth 436.2 million, and also makes up 7.5% of the country's of the city's GRP. There are 2,577 jobs in Darebin's arts and community sector, and makes up for 4.8%, just under 5% of all jobs in in Darebin, and I actually think that's might not seem like a lot, but in many ways that is actually quite sizable. I'll leave it there, and I'll leave it to Councillor McCarthy because he's got an amendment.
All right, thank you, Councillor Walsh. Well, the amendment no longer stands because it's part of the substantive motion. So over to you, Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome, Mayor, as well. I just wanted to touch on what are the sort of the hidden figures in this report, and Councillor Cetus mentioned the heat map element of how we think about where the arts has an impact here. One of the things that isn't picked up naturally is actually that it's not just about large amounts of money. We're talking about millions of dollars of investment, both through council simulated activities, but then the flow-on effects to the economy. What does that actually mean in terms of the broader community? When someone comes to see a show at the Northcote Town Hall and they travel from the other side of the city, it's pretty likely that they're going to have a meal or go for a drink, or if it's daytime, go and visit some of our shops in that surrounding vicinity. So it's not just about the direct investment in the arts activity, it's the catalysing effect all around. But there's also some hidden, I suppose, investments or outcomes of a financial and economic nature, but also of a social nature as well. And that is the value and the preventative health value through which people gain by virtue of being involved in arts-based activities. And I would just draw to Councillors' attention the programs we just funded in the previous report. The people involved, those 500 or so people that are involved in those programs and those arts projects, will have positive life experiences, better health outcomes, better mental health outcomes, greater social connection as a direct result. How do you quantify that? Well, you can go some distance to doing it. It's difficult at a city level, but it's certainly, there is enough evidence there through the work of Vic Health and others to say that it makes a big difference. And the reason why I wanted to set that up, Mr. Chair, is that we have a piece of work here, which is one of the few examples of a local government actually commissioning that type of study, and it is incumbent upon us to put that in front of the people who are currently cutting arts programs in this country. And I would look directly to Canberra. The arts have been decimated in their funding, and we recently saw the end, unfortunately, of Platform Youth Theatre, which started in this city, Mr. Chair, and it no longer exists, and it's a direct result of those arts funding cuts.
Well, let's take that as the final point. Thank you. Councillor Lee?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say a few words on this particular study. I welcome Councillor McCarthy's suggestion about forwarding it to the ministers in the arts in both the state and federal government, given the cuts that's to the arts programs, particularly in the Commonwealth level. I think those figures do speak volumes. $436 million in the gross regional economy and 2,577 jobs. But I think hidden behind all of that is the role of council. Council actually needs to create the right environment for the art sector to thrive here in Darebin. And if you read through the report, you'll note that council has invested some directly $3.8 million for a return of $436 million. Now, where else will you get a return on investment like that? Beats me. But it is the social, economic and health benefits of the council's involvement in the art program that speaks volumes that need to be celebrated. More importantly, I think it is important to acknowledge that we do have some very creative artists here in Darebin. Very recently, people may recall on a Q&A program, a radio shock jock from Sydney called a female presenter there hysterical. And lo and behold, next day, one of the creative artists in Darebin produced a whole series of hysterical T-shirts and handbags, and they're now sold nationwide. So these opportunities do exist, and they exist right here in Darebin, and they need to be celebrated.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Well, I propose to put that to the vote. All those in favour? And I note that that's been carried unanimously. And welcome, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sears.
Please.
Good evening, everyone, and apologies for being late this evening. We now go on to item 6.7.
I'll move that, Mr.
Seniors Home Gardening Program Update. Councillor Grego?
I'll move with that amendment that I said amendment.
If we can hear the amendment. I know it's been circulated for the benefit of the gallery. It's on the screen.
Okay. The amendment.
Second, Councillor Lawrence.
Yep. I'll just add a slight change to that amendment, just on some advice that I received from the officers, that the council receive a report for consideration in the term budget review process. Just to add those few words in.
Mid-term, mid-year, same thing.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'll now speak in relation to this report. Look, I welcome the report that it's finally come to Council. It's been some time that we've been discussing here at Council on how to provide a senior home gardening program to our elderly citizens and people who receive settlement payments and benefits. The idea behind this scheme is that, and what the report talks about is was about providing lawn cutting services to particular people in our community. The report goes into all the attempts that we have made to work in partnership with other organisations to try and provide this service, but it seems like we've reached a bit of a dead end in terms of getting other partners to support Council in providing this service to our pensioners. I know that there's been discussions with other not-for-profit organisations that express some interest in providing this particular service, but we haven't been able to reach an agreement with them in order to provide the service at an affordable and also in a sustainable manner to our ageing community. But I note also in the report, and this goes to the second part of, or that third part of my motion, is that the City of Whittlesea and the City of Yarra offer a limited lawn mowing service with a means-tested fee structure. They already provide this type of service to their residents. Admittedly, it's limited, but it's actually a start. It provides the service to those most in need, particularly people who cannot afford and who are very house proud, who cannot afford to cut lawns. And when we're talking about cutting lawns, Mr. Mayor, we're not only talking about cutting lawns of people's properties, but also cutting the council lawn. So and so what they've done in Whittlesea and Yarra is provide a program to pensioners, to the ageing community, of providing assistance to them to get their lawns cut. I think it's worthy, and this is why I put that third point there. I think it's very worthy that we look at their programs. I mean, if Yarra and Whittlesea could do it, I can't see no reason why Darebin could not put in place such a program.
30 seconds.
We really need to have a look at what they've been doing and see whether we can actually put that in place here in Darebin. I think it's long overdue. This report goes. The request for this information goes back nearly more than a year ago, and I think now we really seriously need to look at what Yarra and Whittlesea do and see whether we can just simply, for a start, put that into practice here in Darebin.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor Lawrence, a second you wish to add?
I welcome the amendment by Councillor Greco. Of course, I don't want to add to any stereotype about 80-year-olds not being out in their gardens. And in Darebin, there's some amazing people with incredible health problems at 88 tending huge gardens. But there does come problems when you've got multiple chronic diseases and things that occur with couples and with singles. And what's really needed is assistance when they're doing big prunes of trees or large amounts of grass. And they actually are still active gardening, but there's some of those bigger tasks they need some kind of subsidised assistance with. So I think it is really part of a more broader ageing in place strategy, and if it's got the right targeting, then it actually will allow people to continue gardening.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. If there's no further speakers, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried. Thank you, councillors. Next item we're looking at is 6.8. Application for approval for a development plan, PAD-3 2015. Councillor McCarthy.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that we defer this item. I'll give an explanation if I get a chance to, if I get a seconder for deferment. And I can give grounds for a deferment if that's
I'm happy to second it on the basis of hearing what the
Sure.
argument
The grounds for deferment would be to provide a comparison report to the development plan for the adjoining property of 200 Beavers Road.
I'll get some advice from our officers in relation to this matter, Mr. Dev, seeing we've had no request for deferment of this. Mr.
Hamilton, yes.
Previously, I have to take a notice that the deferral will be running out of council meetings to come back in time. I'm not sure when we will be able to provide an alternative for the issue of handling.
Can I ask a question in relation to that answer, if that's okay?
Sure.
If council was not to adopt the report this evening or the recommendation, does the applicant or does the relevant party, in this case, have any right to go to VCAT to appeal council's non-decision at this stage?
Mr. Hamilton.
Mr. Mayor, being a development plan, they'll wait for council to make a decision unless there's serious breaches on council's part.
I think we can look at the date that it's been in the system since March last year, so it's been in the system for quite a substantial amount of time, so I think that all parties will be interested to move on with it.
So I've put a motion to defer to receive a report that provides a comparison with the development plan for 200 Beavers Road. If I've got a seconder, I'll speak to the motion.
Question, Councillor Walsh.
In terms of if one were to, I guess you could say till next council meeting, because we've still got one more council meeting in the, I don't know what we can do there, but I imagine this is something we can do in the future.
Answer the question, we can't do anything at the next meeting, so in relation to this matter, and a report coming up to us. Councillor, I'm getting a nod there, so Councillor McCarthy's requested affirmative this item. Do we have a seconder?
Yeah, I said, Mr. Mayor, I already seconded it.
I beg your pardon. Councillor Gregory seconded the affirmative. Okay, Councillor McCarthy, you've got the floor.
Thank you. Look, I won't go into the substance of this. This is the first time I recall seeing this proposed development plan. I don't recall it coming to a council briefing. Apologies if it has, but I don't recollect any presentation on this. And as councillors, particularly councillors in Rucklewood, would be aware, development plans have been used as a means through which to provide certainty for both council, the broader community, and of course in this case the applicant or the owner of the site about what can and can't occur. The development planning process is important, it is significant, it involves providing clear regulation and direction in relation to what can and can't occur on site. And what I've seen from this report rings some alarm bells in terms of what we're being asked to approve. One, because I don't believe we've gone through the briefing process and looking at the impact, but also because the location itself is a significant location, and I certainly don't feel that the recommendation as listed is site responsive or consistent with what our approach was in relation to the adjoining property, which directly fronts the Mary Creek and the Northcote Golf Course. So what I'm seeking is a deferment to allow officers to provide a briefing and a report that provides a comparison in relation to both development plans, because I would expect, given the location, it's a highly sensitive location, a residential interface, the Croxton School, and of course the Mary Creek and Northcote Golf Course frontages just on its doorstep, and an industrial precinct that is potentially transitioning to become a green business precinct as per our own policy, that we would be seeking to optimise the outcome there before we start looking at any statutory planning, permits and the like. And that is the process that follows the approval of a development plan. So on that basis I would like a deferment to allow the briefing and to allow a report that provides a comparison between the two development plans so that we can be clear about what we're hoping to achieve at this site before the process goes any further. It can't be appealed at VCAT. And it is in council's hands to make a decision about this, and I'd like to think that council would do its due diligence and be clear about what it's approving. From memory, and I'll bring up the report here, we're talking about 120 dwellings at the site. Now that's a significant amount of new properties. It's rare that we actually see that volume of new properties being put in place, and I would expect that we'd be seeking to ensure that we're very clear about what we're hoping to achieve. So I don't want to prejudge the application, but I'm not sure if the conditions are exactly where we need to be before we go any further.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Greco, anything to add?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm glad that Councillor McCarthy has raised this deferment, and it was really interesting to hear.
Not a planning permit.
Sorry?
It's a development plan.
It's
not
a
a planning
deferment
permit.
plan.
Just in relation to this particular report, and I was really interested to hear the reasons that Councillor McCarthy has put forward. I think it's incumbent on us to make informed decisions, and I think that whilst I want to first acknowledge that area there needs a total transformation from what it currently is. I mean, at the moment it's just basically not a very suitable area, so we need to have something happen there. But I think these types of decisions come to council on a fairly rare basis. We don't decide on a monthly basis about structure plans, so we need to make a very informed decision. And I think that if it were to come back to council, but for councils actually to receive a briefing, because I note here on page 42 that this matter is not the subject of a previous council resolution. So we need a briefing, a thorough briefing, as we do usually get on issues that deal with structure plans. Once we've done that and we've been able to ask all the questions that we want to, then I think we're in a better position to bring this to council and actually look at the structure plan and see where we take it from there.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers? If not, the recommendations to defer the matter, I'll put that to a vote.
Would you like me to read the full motion?
Yes,
so
please.
Council is clear. The motion is that council defer the matter to receive a further report providing a comparison with the development plan for the adjoining site of 200 Beavers Road, Northcote.
It's clear. So the motion is to defer the matter. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Councillor.
I'll speak against it.
Speakers against. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, look, I'm not sure that the other site relates directly to this site. Obviously there are issues about transitions which would be considered and have been considered here. But I do recall so much delay on the other development we're talking about too, which I think the council put 6 months or 12 months of delay again in not starting processes and not confronting the actual decisions. And delaying processes is very expensive. I'm glad to see the other development that we're now lionising and we delayed endlessly has fully solved. So, but I think we actually have to grapple with that we have got a structure, we've got motions on council to develop this and transition it from industrial. We've gone through the small industrial plots on this. It's gone through it's gone through 20 years of trying to find a future post its previous public use. And I don't see why we'd add delay 20 years down the track.
Any other speakers? Councillor Service.
Just one point that Councillor Greco made, and I think that puts it in context. I distinctly recall that this process in its modern form actually has been for the better part of something like 4 years. We did actually adopt it as a matter of principle. I think it was towards the middle or to the latter part of last year, might have been the latter part of last year in fact, to agree in principle, because one of the obligations or the onuses that we placed on those who were pushing for it was that we weren't prepared to accept one landlord or one owner wishing to have a rezoning. That they needed to go away and do some homework and team up with neighbouring owners if they so wish to create a bigger overlay for the site. So 4 years in the making to get to the point where council had adopted it, I think it's a fair rigorous process. But I would just put another consideration on the table just in terms of placing it in its modern context. These particular overlays are not new to us. In fact, if we consider, for instance, even the Northcote Structure Plan, Mr Mayor, we had considered a separate overlay with respect to the Northern Horizons because the owners in that circumstance did not wish to participate formally within the structure plan, but they wanted to be recognised in terms of the transitioning that Councillor Lawrence mentioned. So In that circumstance, I think to myself, well, we've had quite a strong push. In fact, I do note that we've had a recent application with respect to a rezoning just recently. 30 seconds. So I think we've given arguably perhaps less consideration to their applications versus the one that's before us. So I feel pretty much informed across the issues such that we can make a decision tonight without seeking to defer.
Thank you, Councillor Seedis. There's no other speakers. Councillor McCarthy, you can close the debate.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Seedis, for your comments, because I think it illustrates where Council might be at in relation to this particular site. I would ask councillors to consider the question about whether they could describe what is the actual frontage that exists between this development plan and the adjoining property. And I'm not asking for an answer, but it's a rhetorical question. The rebuttal is that councillors are speaking about a development plan which I don't think councillors necessarily are across the detail, and I'm very concerned about us voting on something when the merits of this proposal cannot be thrashed out, when councillors have not had a chance to be briefed on it adequately, when it does not sit in context in relation to the adjoining development plan, and when it sets a precedent for all the other development that occurs. So I would reject the assertion made by Councillor Lawrence and echoed by Councillor Seedis that we're comfortable with this. I'm not comfortable at all with this, and I don't feel that Council has applied the rigorous test that we apply to other sites. And we don't need to be rushed on this. It is not a statutory planning matter, but once we approve this tonight, we can't go back. In fact, we remove the capacity to have any serious impact on the structural level of this site. It is 120 dwellings. We want to get it right. There is very limited dwelling diversity. We talk about housing outcomes. I don't see a mixture of housing outcomes on this site. We talk about appropriate setbacks and we talk about appropriate frontages. We are setting a precedent with this application in its current form, which I think is very concerning, and hence I would ask councillors to seriously consider deferment to allow us to have a fresh set of eyes on this and a discussion about what the vision is for that precinct. And I would ask councillors again to reconsider their positions. We're not against the clock on this. We have every opportunity to have a look at it. You can come back to us in a couple of weeks.
Time. Thank you, Councillor. That closes the debate. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of the deferment? Those against? The vote is 4-4. It's a tied vote. I'll therefore use my casting vote to vote against the deferment. So the motion is lost. Councillors, we have another recommendation there. We have someone move that, please.
I'm happy to move this one.
Move Councillor Seedis. Seconder.
I'll second it.
Seconder, Councillor Williams.
Can't talk.
You wish to speak to it, Councillor Seedis?
I think my point's in opposition to the deferral, so I'll leave it at that.
You can see where this will go. Any speakers on the item?
Seconder.
Seconder was Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams wishes to speak? If not,
Nothing further.
any other debate or comments from councillors? Councillor McCarthy.
Look, I'll speak against this, Mr. Mayor, and I will do so because we are not talking about a planning permit. We are talking about a development plan. And when we have development plans, we are setting in place the controls and the principles for development on that site. Now, I would ask councillors to think about when it was that we discussed this development plan in the room next door or the room next door in great detail. I'm struggling to find that particular moment in time. When we looked at the Northcote Structure Plan in 2007, before my time, but then it became Council Planning Scheme Policy, it was thrashed out for years. In the adjoining property of 200 Beavers Road, we put in very strict controls. Now, whilst it seems to be a very positive development, very high environmentally sensitive design principles, I'm not seeing that included in this development plan. So when we have what's considered a brownfield site, it is very rare in the city of Darebin for us to have new sites that are not being built on open space but in fact built on former industrial land. We need to get it right. There is nothing wrong with taking a couple of weeks to look at this in some more detail before we sign off on the structural controls that will dictate what occurs on this site. We're talking about 120 dwellings. If this council is serious about things like social and affordable housing, if it's talking about inclusionary zoning, if it's talking about the sorts of things which we've made direct representation to the planning minister on, that needs to be in the development plan. Here is a perfect site, in fact, for inclusionary zoning, where we say quite specifically that 10 to 15% of this site is available for people on low incomes or people that can't access the competitive housing market in Northcote. Here is an opportunity to engage and consider Section 173 agreements and to look at the opportunity for housing for women who are fleeing domestic violence. We have got a huge opportunity here. It is a unique site. I would ask councillors to seriously consider not supporting this at this stage.
Any other speakers? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I also speak against this motion to be carried. And I do so on the back of a similar exercise that passed this chamber about 18 months, well, about 2 years ago, when the owner of Preston Market put a planning plan application in through the council, development plan through the council. And as councillor will recall at that time, there was a huge amount of residential apartments put into that development plan over and above what the council's Preston Central Structure Plan was allowing for, indeed what the Preston Market Structure allows for. So at that time, the council was not in agreement with that development plan because it was poorly thought through and it lacked the rigour to deal with not only the housing issues but also the congestion issues, the traffic issues which are unique to this particular site here. So if we are to be consistent, just as we have rejected that plan from the Preston Market 2 years ago, we should do the same here because this development plan follows a similar pattern and it is done at an opportune time to catch this council because they know we're into a caretaker period and they are essentially forcing us, blackmailing us, if you will, to make a decision, and I'm not going to do it.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Seaton.
Mr Mayor, if there's no further contributions, I'd like to use my right of reply.
No further debate? You may close the debate now, Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think, on balance, I wish to restate my points, but I think because the circumstances, the way we find ourselves, I hear the comments that have been made by the other councillors, and I'm not prepared to allow you, Mr Mayor, to use a casting vote with regards to this issue and draw undue attention to the council. So on that basis, I'm going to be voting against the recommendation.
All right, let's close the debate. So I'll put back to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hands. Those against?
You want to redo it?
Thank you, that's it. Right. So that's lost.
Just a procedural question, Mr Mayor. Are we, have we resolved this issue or?
No.
That's right. So that just one procedural question.
We haven't approved it.
So is the motion lost?
Just a question. Just a procedural question. Then, are we
it's lapsed.
Are we allowed to revisit the deferral motion, or would I have any?
No.
Motion.
We've lost the motion. The motion's not carried, so technically some advice here. So we haven't been able to defer it.
I'll call a division then, Mr Mayor.
All those in favour, please stand. I name Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Fontana. Those against, please stand. I name Councillor Walsh, Greco, Lee, Williams, McCarthy and Sudas. So it's going to come up. Okay, we can have another motion. We need to.
Just seek advice from the officers. Are there any motions available? Obviously the matter is lapsed, so it will be dealt with by the next council.
Yeah, next council.
Yep. That's the case, Mr. Dean? Okay. Okay, so the motion has lapsed. That will come back to another council meeting, probably in the near future. Councillors, that concludes that item.
Mr Mayor, can the item be considered by council in the caretaking period?
Mr. Dev?
We've checked that
we'll have to check
legally, yeah.
Yeah, whether we can or can't. Okay. So that item's left. Members of the gallery? Have to come back for another meeting. Next item we're considering is 6.9.
Mr Mayor, with your indulgence, and if there are no speakers accordingly, I'd like to move item 6.9 and 6.10 on block.
Do we have a seconder? Second, Councillor Williams. Councillor Lee, question?
Just a question. I assume for item 6.10 is for option 3 because I picked up a typo error in the agenda where option 4 was listed.
Thank you, Councillor
Lee.
Option 3 for that item. So we've got a mover to move on block. 6.9 and 6.10, Councillor Cetus and Councillor Williams. So I'll put that to move on block. All those in favour? That's carried.
I vote in favour.
I'll put the vote again. All those in favour of moving them on block. Those against? Thank you. So we're moving them on block. Now we have the resolution. Councillor Cetus has moved. Seconded, Councillor Williams. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. The recommendation as per listed, 6.9 and 6.10. We now go to 6.11.
Happy to move that, Mr Mayor.
Progress report on council strategies. Move Councillor McCarthy, second Councillor Greco. Councillor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Oh, look, I'll be very brief. This is a bumper report. It's an annual report that we provide, which provides an overview of council's progress in relation to its range of strategies. I would just draw to councillors' attention on pages 59 and 60, and in particular 60, you'll see there the strategies listed that this report relates to. There are 37 strategies. I'm not going to, in the minute time that I have available, go through the outcomes in relation to those strategies, but I would say that this type of reporting was instituted several years ago with the realisation and recognition that we had a whole range of different reporting arrangements in relation to our strategies, and some never came back to council and some came quite regularly. So this provided all of them in line. Significantly, Mr Mayor, the key thing about the report on the strategies and their progress is that there are some strategies that from time to time actually become more relevant than we ever expected, and in fact become less relevant, or in fact in some cases are either completed or become redundant. And I would just draw to council's attention the fact that there are some strategies that are coming up for renewal soon or for revisitation, and one of those strategies which councillors would see from the report is the climate change and community climate change action plans, and council of course has been undertaking consultation in relation to those particular strategies and what should be council's carbon emissions reductions targets for both council operations and for the community. So that's a live one where the strategy itself and the philosophy underpinning the strategy is being seriously reconsidered because of the changed state and federal and international environment. I'd also draw councillors' attention to strategies that have been adopted relatively recently, and of course are starting to already bear fruit, and not to play too much of a pun, but the Urban Food Production Strategy, which was adopted in this term of council in 2014, has seen a whole range of food-based initiatives in our community gardens and other activities, which of course have great social outcomes. And of course, a significant one adopted last year, Mr Mayor, is Watershed, which will guide future development activity in Darebin to ensure that wherever possible, new developments such as that which was just about to be considered seek to minimise the loss of water from site and in fact reticulate water back through on site to maximise the efficiency of the use of water, to minimise waste, and of course to also prevent pollution to our natural places such as our creeks. So each of our strategies here has a range of outcomes, a lot of achievements in there. There's some places where council needs to invest more to deliver on those outcomes, but other councillors may wish to add to those comments.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Greco.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, as Councillor McCarthy said, there's quite a wide range of strategies there, which shows obviously the complexity of what the council deals with on its day-to-day activities as part of its administration of the city. So what's clear from that is that this council is not just about roads, rates and rubbish, but deals with a whole series of issues which impact on people's lives in all spheres. I'll just highlight three areas, three strategies, where we've been seen to be leaders both in our sector and both in the community in general. The first one is in relation to the anti-racism strategy. We're sector leaders in relation to that strategy. Actually, recently there was a report that came to Council where the South Australian Public Service actually requested copies of our anti-racism training package in order to roll that training out amongst some of its government departments. Also, I referred to our multicultural action plan. Again, Darebin is one of the leaders recognised in the sector for many, many years in relation to how we promote multiculturalism in our city and how we actually value the contribution that people from diverse backgrounds make. And also the third one that I think is worthy to point out is strategy number 27, Preventing Violence Against Women Action Plan. We are, I think, the only council, the only council that does not, it's the only council that actually employs an officer to deal specifically with this issue in relation to the preventative violence against women. No other council does that. Lots of councils talk about that, and lots of parties out there talk about this particular issue, but we've actually put our money where our mouth is and employed somebody to actually undertake work in this particular space, which is very, very important for our community.
Good point, Councillor Greco. Thank you for mentioning that. If there's no further comments or debate, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carry that item to move. Thank you, councillors. That concludes our report for the evening. We can now go to item 7, consideration of responses to notice of motions. We have none there, Mr. CEO. Item 8, no notice of motion. Item 9, urgent business, Mr. CEO.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I have approved 2 urgent businesses for tonight meeting. One is personnel matter, confidential, which will be dealt with in the confidential part of the meeting, which has been briefed by Ms. Stevens to councillors a while ago.
So they go in the confidential section 15,
yeah, we'll consider that at the time. Second one is related to supporting earthquake affected people in Italy, as necessitated by council resolution which came in, and also Councillor Trent McCarthy has foreshadowed about bringing up urgent business today, and which has been not accepted before, but it will play out in the urgent business section if it is.
So I have foreshadowed to our CEO that I would be requesting that Council admit the item because of the extenuating circumstances in relation to that particular urgent item. So if that needs a procedural motion...
He's refused it though.
A vote of Council under our governance local law can allow the item to be admitted.
Only then if it cannot be safely conveniently deferred to the next order meeting. I understand the explanation given by the CEO is that it can be deferred conveniently.
And I have a different interpretation of the reality of the situation, Mr. Mayor. If I get a chance to speak to
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
I will give the reason.
Mr. CEO,
it can be brought in as an item when it's motion is being moved and discussed at that time rather.
Could you please speak up? Sorry, could you please speak
We'll wait for the item to come to as part of the agenda, then we can debate it.
Councillor McCarthy, what is your item?
I'll read out the item. So for councillors, the item is that the Mayor write to the Minister for Planning in relation to the proposed 10-storey mixed-use development at 195 to 209 St George's Road, Northcote, requesting that VCAT reference number P1810/2016 be called in accordance with section 58 of Schedule 1 of the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal Act 1998. So that's the motion. It's been circulated to councillors previously in previous days.
We'll receive a response from our officers too, for that matter. We have a second for that?
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to second in order to hear the debate.
No, well, there's no debate. We're actually accepting it as an urgent item. If it's accepted, then there'll be a debate.
That's, Mr. Mayor, I'll repeat. I'm happy to second it so that then I can... I'm happy to second...
No.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to second that we hear this item as an urgent item.
We've got to put it to a vote for it to be accepted, Councillor Greco, before
that's
we
what
can
I
actually
said
hear it.
yesterday.
Okay. So we've got a mover and a seconder to accept this item as an urgent item. I'll put that to a vote.
Do I say, I don't
No,
think
no,
councillors
speak
are aware
yet.
of
You've got to accept it first, then you can speak. If it's accepted, then we'll have a debate. If it's not
I'm
accepted
allowed to
as an
speak
urgent
to a
item,
procedural item, Mr Mayor.
no.
Can we just check
Now,
that
I
advice
believe that
from...
Councillor McCarthy is entitled to speak
He's not.
in relation to
It's
the
in the
item.
Act.
He's moving a motion.
It's in the Act. It's got to be accepted first. We've got to play by the rules, Councillor
Mr. Mayor,
Greco.
can you point to the...
We'll do that right now.
I'd like advice from our officers about the
Right
ability
now.
to speak to a procedural motion, so councillors are clear on why the matter is urgent, because I've not been given an opportunity at this meeting.
You were given information like all councillors were today.
Mr. Mayor, the chairs have determined if it is not stipulated a procedural matter.
The basis of the decision is that the VCAT hearing for this matter does not commence until February 2017. Therefore, the urgent motion has not satisfied Clause 21 of the Governance Local Law and can be safely considered at the next meeting. Pretty clear there, Councillor.
Mr Mayor, you're providing the argument against my
I'm
proposed
explaining why it
motion.
wasn't accepted by
Mr. Mayor,
the officers as requested by some.
I would contest that under our governance local law, I have the right to speak to a procedural matter to bring to councillors' attention why it should be considered an urgent item on this agenda. Now, I would ask again, through you to our officers, to provide clarity in relation to the right as a councillor to speak to a procedural matter, so to make the argument as to why something can be considered as an urgent item and admitted onto the agenda, as Councillor Greco has seconded that request.
First has to be accepted, Councillor Greco.
This is the motion. I would like to speak to the motion for it to be accepted.
We have to follow the rules, Councillor McCarthy.
So we'll wait
to follow the rules.
the officer then, Mr Mayor.
Section 47, Councillor McCarthy, in relation to procedural motions. Unless otherwise prohibited, a procedural motion may be moved at any time and must be dealt with immediately by the chairperson. As there's no clarity in relation to that, I'll make a ruling that I will not accept that, Councillor McCarthy, and that's in our local law.
So just to get clarity, Mr Mayor, you're making a ruling to not allow me to speak to the procedural
That's the rule,
motion.
Councillor McCarthy.
Then I'll
I'm following the
move to
rules. Thank you. So now,
I will move a motion to overrule
Sorry,
your
Councillor
ruling.
McCarthy.
Councillor
McCarthy,
that motion.
The motion is, as I've read it, and following the rules, that we are now voting to accept it as an urgent item. Moved yourself, Councillor Greco seconded. I will now put that to a vote, Councillor McCarthy.
I'm moving a motion to overrule your ruling.
Mr Mayor, if I may...
No, you can't, Councillor Greco. You
Mr
can't.
Mayor,
You can't.
as a point of order, Councillor McCarthy has
I've made a ruling, Councillor.
Mr Mayor, you're right, you have ruled against it, but there is also discretion under the rules that if we're not happy with your ruling, that we can put forward a motion of dissent against your ruling. So you cannot just terminate the debate. And in that regard, I put forward a motion of dissent.
Thank you. Let me
against your
explain the Act. Let me explain the Act, okay? I'll read it. Dissent from chairperson's ruling. A councillor may move that the meeting dissent from the chairperson's ruling...
Could you speak up, Mr Mayor? We can't hear.
A councillor may move that the meeting dissent from the chairperson's ruling on the point of order by moving that the chairperson ruling, setting out the ruling or part of, be dissented from. It's not a dissent order. Okay, the points of order aren't even explained here by yourself, Councillor
Mr. Mayor,
Greco.
I move now.
No, I'm not going to turn this into a circus, Councillor Greco.
Motion of dissent
Thank you.
against
No.
your ruling.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor, if I can have a copy of the rules, our governance
you've
rules,
got a
I'll
copy.
point you
You've
to
got
the
a copy.
particular
No.
section
Councillor Greco,
where a councillor...
I'm making a ruling that Councillor McCarthy has moved to include an item as urgent. You've seconded. I'll now put that to a vote.
Mr Mayor, I
Mr. Mayor, you can't do that, Mr. Mayor. It's against the rules. It's against our governance laws.
It's not.
Well, if I can have a copy of the governance
You've
laws,
got a
I'll
copy.
point you,
Point to your
Mr.
last
Mayor.
year.
If I have a copy of the governance laws,
Grandstand as much as you like, Councillor Greco.
well, can I have a copy of the governance laws then?
Mr. Mayor, perhaps it's an opportune time to move to a 10-minute recess so we can resolve this issue before we have any more further debate on this.
Yes.
You can read it. You can read it there.
So the first sentence last.
Yeah. Services facilities.
Hang on, so we're on the right.
Thank you, councillors. We have a motion here to accept an item as urgent, moved by Councillor McCarthy, seconded by Councillor Greco. I'll put
Mr
that...
Mayor, I'd ask again whether you've received advice from officers about whether Councillor Greco can dissent in your ruling. You read a section just a moment ago that seemed to illustrate that he could dissent in your ruling.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to get a copy of the rules, but I haven't been given a copy. I'd love to receive a copy.
I'll get advice from the officer here,
Yeah.
so that way...
But I'd like to get a copy myself.
You can give it a copy. Everyone's got a copy of this. We've all been had training in this. Mr. Centre, Ms. Stevens, can you please explain the matter?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, clause 53 of the governance local law states that a councillor may move that a meeting dissent from the chairperson's ruling on a point of order. Valid points of order include anything which is contrary to this local law, is irrelevant to the matter under consideration, is outside the powers of council, improper behaviour, is offensive, constitutes a tedious repetition of something already said, or is an act of disorder.
Pretty clear.
So, Mr Mayor, on that basis, I will strongly object to your ruling. I would like it noted in the minutes that I object to your ruling, denying me the opportunity to speak to a procedural motion for no other reason that you do not wish to hear why the matter is urgent.
It's in the rules and it's been recorded too,
I
Councillor
would like
McCarthy.
it noted in the minutes.
Sure.
I'm an elected councillor.
It's been recorded.
I would like it noted in the minutes that I'm an elected councillor. Other councillors have not been afforded the opportunity to hear why the matter is urgent. I was asked today by our officers, and I would like it noted, why the matter is urgent. I provided that advice. Councillors have not seen that reason why it's urgent.
I've just explained to you
You have
why.
explained in your view why you believe it's not urgent.
I've explained
what
to you
I am
why,
saying is you
why
have
it's
not allowed
urgent
me
and why
to explain why the matter is urgent.
All right, thank you, Councillor.
The matter
McCarthy.
remains urgent, Mr.
You
Mayor.
made your point. You made your point. Thank
And
you, Councillor.
I would
Thank
like
you,
to note
Councillor.
it, and if other councillors wish to dissent in the Chair's
That's
Mayor's
your-
ruling, I'd like them to have
That's
that
fine.
noted as well.
Okay. Councillor McCarthy has moved to an item as urgent. Seconded Councillor Greco. I'll now put that vote for Council to consider that item to be considered as an urgent item. All those in favour? Those against? It's a tied vote. I will use my casting vote to not accept it. Therefore, it's refused. Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. That concludes our urgent items for the evening. We now go to... Second one. The second one is the relief of victims.
I would like a division call in relation to the previous item, Mr Mayor.
Division called, okay. All those in favour of Councillor McCarthy's call for an urgent item, please stand. I name Councillor, please stand. I name Councillor Lee, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Walsh and Councillor Greco. Those against, please stand. I name Councillor Williams, Cetus, Montana and Lawrence. And to record that Councillor Montana used his casting vote to vote against it. The other urgent item we have, councillors, is the relief for victims of the Italian earthquake that has been circulated. We need a motion to accept it into the meeting.
Before that motion is considered,
We'll just wait until the gallery vacates the chamber. Vacates the chamber in silence. Thank you. Quietly, please. Quietly, please.
You should be more respectful and moral. What we
Maybe.
would like to see.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. We now have another urgent item for us to consider to be accepted. There's relief for the Italian victims of the...
so then before that item is discussed, I'd just like to, I've noticed that in the urgent item, it mentions an organisation by the name of COASIT. I'm a member of that organisation, and therefore, as a result of that, I will abstain from the and I'll let
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Greco will vacate the chamber for this item.
And that's why he didn't get enough, because he wasn't going to.
Okay, councillor, we have a resolution to accept this as an urgent item. Can someone move that, please? Someone move to accept this as an urgent item.
Yep, I'll move that way.
Move, Councillor Lawrence. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cetus. Put that to a vote to accept it. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. It's been accepted. We now need someone to move the matter.
What is yours?
Move, Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, I'd move the motion, Mr Mayor. But you've got a recommendation, it hasn't got
Correct, that's correct.
I thought we were getting advice on that.
Okay, so Councillor Lawrence has moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cetus. You wish to step
Yes.
in? Thank you, Councillor Cetus. Councillor Lawrence, you can speak to it now.
Yes, Mr Mayor. A number of natural disasters do occur around the world, and this council has given donations in the past to a range of places and communities, including I think Fijian community and Nepalese community. And this motion seeks that we recognise the significant Italian population in the city and respond in some way to the situation there. I do note that this was delayed, this motion, because there was some debate about which organisation should be supported or not supported.
Well, you wanted to go any meeting line, but...
I beg your pardon, Councillor Walsh. Don't interrupt, please. Don't interrupt, please.
Mr Mayor, could I actually be heard about what, I'm not sure, but I think it was a defamatory comment about some other organisation.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. You can continue.
Of course, that has been deferred, this motion's been deferred, and I'm in the hands really of both the council and officers of advice about who is coordinating efforts in central Italy at this point in time. So that's now come back, and I recommend the motion.
Thank you very much. Seconder wish to speak? No? If there's no other speakers, I'll put that to a vote. Councillor Lee.
Just a question through you, Mr Mayor. So, we are recommending COASIT over Caritas Australia and Centrecare. Can I just get some explanation as to why that is preferred over the other two?
To the officer.
There's three different alternative recommendations, and we were expected to make that decision.
Council's call.
Yeah.
So it's only one option. We've got two other options to consider. So I just want to know why.
Well, he's moved the option 1 there, the Attorney Constable, just to COASIT organisation. Okay, Councillor, put that to a vote. All those in favour?
Mr Mayor, I still haven't received my response to my question, which was why was COASIT chosen over the other two?
Councillor Lawrence moved it because there's a gap there.
That's why I asked the questions through you to Councillor Lawrence.
We could pick either.
Mr Mayor, my advice at the moment and previously is that there is central organisation, and in fact it's not just from Melbourne, in fact it's through Sydney, and that was the way Consulate and other people were moving. Now, happy, as I said last 2 weeks ago, happy to hear other people's views, but that is my view at this point.
I think if you actually read the three options provided, the Cunning Concert, the COASIT organisation, direct contact, whereas the other's a Catholic organisation and the other's Semicare. It's another organisation, probably not directly linked with any retained community. And that's what it says. If there's no further comment or questions, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? Those who have abstained? Carried. Thank you, councillors. That concludes our urgent items for the evening.
I'll call for a division.
Division on that? Councillor Lyons called for a division on that item. All those in favour, please stand. I name Councillor Walsh, Lyons, Fontana, Williams and Cetus. Those against, stand. Those abstained, stand please. I name Councillor Lee, Councillor McCarthy. Thank you. We now need a motion to accept. Councillor Greg has to come back first. Okay, councillors, we need to accept this other urgent item into the agenda in the confidential section, which the CEO alluded to early on. It's a matter of a response. It's a personal matter. Personnel matter in relation to the Chief Executive Officer. The background report is this report in relation to a response for the local government investigations and compliance section.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I missed half of what you said then.
Okay, it's a personnel matter in relation to the Chief Executive Officer. It's a report in relation to a response from the local government investigations and compliance inspectorate.
Okay, thank you.
We had this circulated and also briefed prior to our meeting. Stephen has
Mr Mayor, before we continue, I would also like to declare a conflict of interest in relation to this matter after having the opportunity to actually see what the report was about. I noted that there are matters there that I may have a conflict of interest, and the conflict of interest is in relation to a direct conflict due to legal proceedings between myself and the CEO.
And you'll vacate the chamber?
So I'll vacate the chamber.
Yeah, and you'll have to vacate later as well.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I need to do the same thing for the same reason.
So it's a direct interest for yourself?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You'll have to vacate for this matter too. So councillors, we're voting on to accept this item as a confidential matter to be considered in the confidential section of our agenda. We've had Councillor Cetus move, second Councillor Walsh. All those in favour? Carried. We are going to accept that as an urgent item in the confidential section of our agenda this evening. Can we ask the CEO and Councillor Greco to return to the chamber, please?
I move that we move it to come on.
No, we'll keep it to cover still.
We'll put it together with the other.
Okay, right, okay.
Okay, councillors, we can proceed. We do have a quorum here, so we are now looking at item 10, general business items. There are no general business items, so we'll move on to item 11. Do you have any petitions from councillors in relation to item 11?
I have two petitions to present, Mr Mayor.
Chief Executive Officer.
Yep, and they're both to the Chief Executive Officer. The first one contains 23 signatures. The petition is: We, the undersigned residents of Darebin, request that the City of Darebin name a park, reserve or parcel of native bushland or part thereof in honour of Thornbury local Glen Ochre. And there's 23 signatures there.
Seconder? Seconder?
I'll second it.
Second, Councillor Lee.
Thank you. And do we need to vote on that?
No,
first?
well,
No? It's just accepted in?
it's just
Got to vote to accept
You've got to vote,
petition.
yeah. Okay, all those in favour? That's accepted. Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Can I pass that to the Chief Executive?
Thank you. I'll pass that over. The second petition is also to Darebin City Council, titled School Crossing Supervisor Needed for Yarralee Street. The petition reads, "We, the undersigned community, wish to inform the Darebin City Council that a school crossing supervisor is urgently required to patrol Yarralee Street on the north side of the Heidelberg Road intersection. There have been 2 incidents where adults have been struck by cars while crossing the road in recent years, and many near-miss incidents involving school children.
Second, Councillor Walsh.
If Council does not act to provide a school crossing supervisor urgently, there is a high risk of a serious incident involving a school child, and there are 55 signatures."
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Seconded. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Any more petitions from councillors? Councillor Walsh.
Yes, as foreshadowed earlier, I have a petition from residents of Fairfield and North Elphington regarding making Edwin Street safe.
So what does it say?
Make Edwin Street safe, upgrade road to safe working condition, no more pothole puddles, beautify the street for use of pedestrians, cyclists and local residents, appropriately classify Edwin Street as a made road by council, and not for a no special charge scheme for necessary improvements.
I'm happy to second the petition. I'd like to know how many signatures there are, because we are required to mention that in the governance local law.
Sure.
Approximately will do. Councillor Walsh. Edwin Street has been a topic before where a special charge will be considered if it's proceeded with.
About 30, but I am told there are...
It's only what's there.
But I'm told there are more, but 30 odd.
Okay, Councillor McCarthy's seconded. What's your motion, Councillor?
Table it to the CEO.
Councillor McCarthy seconded. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor Walsh, if you did submit that. Any other petitions? Yeah. Councillor Gregor.
Yeah, I have a petition here also from some residents. Mr Mayor, it's a rather long petition in terms of the preamble of what's been requested. If you like, Mr Mayor, for the sake of brevity, I can give a summation of it and just read the last section, which then calls for it. It's in relation to Niblick Street and Flag Street in Kingsbury, and it's in regards to some near misses and near crashes in that vicinity there. It's a curve. It's a street that's got a curve. I actually visited it on the weekend, and yeah, Mr Mayor, I'm actually summarising a lot of what's
actually speaking to it.
And so what the says here, we the undersigned hope that council could discuss this situation with the hope of finding a resolution to avoid further damage or potential tragedy or injury. There are 19 signatories to this petition, and I move that the petition be tabled and that a report be provided to council on actions that it proposes to take.
Thank you, Councillor. Hang on a second.
We're going to table the petition, not move the motion. It'll come later with the report.
Okay, can come to the next meeting or come to the report, Councillor Gregor. Is that okay?
Thank you.
According to our rules. Okay, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. If there are no more petitions, we'll proceed with the items tonight. Item 12, reports to standing committees. 12.1, the summary report of the Audit Committee. We have a recommendation there.
Happy to move.
Move Councillor Walsh, seconded Councillor Williams. If there's no debate, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Item 13, records of assemblies of councillors. 13.1, assemblies of councillors had. Move Councillor McCarthy, seconded Councillor Williams. All those in favour? Carried. Report reports by mayors and councillors. These have been circulated amongst councillors today. We'll have someone move that, please. Move, Councillor Williams. Seconder.
Just would note, I don't think councillors have actually received a hard copy.
We haven't tonight, have we? No. Probably saving on paper.
I'll second it.
We've only received the ones that were circulated.
Yeah, only those have been circulated, so we'll make sure that those which have been circulated will actually be included in the report. Okay. Move, Councillor Williams. Seconded. Councillor Lee. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. That's carried. Okay, we now go on to item 15, consideration of reports considered confidential. Councillors.
Mr Mayor, move that we move into camera.
Councillor Services. Voted move to go into camera. Second, Councillor Williams. All those in favour? Carried. Members of the gallery, we have to vacate the chambers for this item. We'll consider some items in confidence. So I'm joining for refreshments at the rear of us very soon.